Hey, this is my thing. All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Zachary Steele. I am the founder and executive director of Broadleaf Writers Association out of Atlanta, the greater Georgia area, and also author of the upcoming book, The Weight of Ashes, which is out July 13th. I love both as broadleaf and as a writer to be able to sit down and have conversations with other writers and people who I admire. And I'm very fortunate today to have somebody that I do greatly admire, Anthony Laura, who is the artistic director of Face to Face Films. And very, very happy to have you here and to talk a little bit about what you're doing. And then I suppose we're going to flip the tables and you're going to grill me a little bit, and then we'll go about our separate ways and go be busy again. So welcome. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool.
All right.
So yeah, obviously it's awesome to talk to you. I know we've been connected for a number of years now and shared a lot of messages, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually the first time we're communicating face to face in the modern
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, it is.
Which is actually pretty awesome. I mean, I feel like I know you well enough, but I haven't actually really formally met you yet. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel this.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, I remember, starting the when I first started following you, you were doing a lot of small films. I mean, I know Corinne stands out as one of them that I recall offhand, but obviously that isn't something you could continue doing when the pandemic rolled around. So
Yeah.
then I do want to ask, okay, so the pandemic hits, and I
Mhm.
know you were working on the girl with the red hair, to go onto stage again to do a full run because you had done a sort of preview run the December before that. What happened in that moment when all the uncertainty hit and you're still working on that, but starting to realize this may not actually happen this year? How did you come about pivoting to doing online performances?
So we had transitioned to do a workshop online, which we were doing in person for the next run of the show. Um, and then we had an idea to just get people together in the company to do a private read, which we all really enjoyed. And we decided to do the next read publicly. Um, and but by then that was June rather. So we still actually thought that we would be going back out in person by September.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess maybe around August hit and we realized it was off the table for quite some time. So
Mm-hmm.
we decided to go further with the reading series and then start building the company up. Um, so yeah, it really just led from a point of we were starting to think about what would this new virtual situation look like, um, and then it kind of took off from there.
Yeah. I know we started kind of here and there with some projects. What was what were some of the bigger technical challenges? Where did you learn how to make it more of a professional performance online?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything when I started.
None of us
Like,
did.
I didn't even know you could mute yourselves. Like,
Uh,
I had no, I'd never used Zoom prior to the reading.
yeah.
Um, like even for my conferences, I was still using FaceTime. Um, and so then we found out that you can do invited audiences in Zoom, which was great. But we were faced with, um, when someone speaks and you're in speaker view, which is usually the best way to watch.
Mhm.
Um, like we had a narrator, so the narrator would interrupt the flow, their black box would show up. And that was very intrusive.
Mhm.
Because then if the other person didn't speak right away or Zoom didn't pick it up, we would be stuck on the narrator's box. And I don't have the controls on Zoom
Right.
to do that.
Right.
So we started seeing how we could do that, and we really couldn't find a way. There really just wasn't a way to get rid of that without taking out the narration. And in the film scripts, we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So we transitioned over in October to StreamYard, which you have more control over. However, the issue is that you can only have 10 people at a time.
Hmm.
So when we did Faces in December, we had a cast of probably close to like 15 or 16. And we had to, and they can't even be backstage. They have to be out of the platform.
Oh, wow.
And then you have to let them in. So you have to communicate through text. And I noticed a lot of places do this because of bandwidth.
Hmm.
Um, and StreamYard is a difficult platform actually, just because it uses a lot of bandwidth. So, but I think going to StreamYard allowed us to make things cleaner,
Hmm.
allow them to not just look, because we've never done a recorded reading. All the readings have always been live.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's been
Well, I
interesting.
mean, and it's really interesting because when you started doing it, like I'm trying to remember what the first one you
I
did
think the
was.
first one was the first live one was Little Women.
Little Women, that's what it was. I knew it was a classic. I couldn't remember what it was, but I remember watching it, and I think I was one I actually had reviewed,
Mhm.
and I was just kind of wowed at how it was a little awkward at first for me as a viewer, but then I got into it, and then I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. They've done a great job. And then I'd watch the next one, I go, wow, this is better, the production, and then it just kept getting better and better to the point where it feels like you guys have fallen into a rhythm, and everybody knows what they should expect out of it, and it just seems to roll very seamlessly. So kudos to you and your team, because you for if you didn't know what you were doing to begin with, you have at least gotten to the point where it looks like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I found when I was watching readings was people had the physical script and they were looking down. And that was one of the first things that I addressed in what we were doing, was we need to put our script up here. And I can't tell you that I've never asked actors to be off book. And everyone thinks they're memorized, just because of where the placement is.
Mm.
But eyeline and the placement really makes a difference for, I think, engaging with the audience.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I consistently see, and big Hollywood stars as well, reading the script, and it's nice to hear the words, but I don't feel engaged and I get bored.
Right. Yeah,
Um, yeah.
definitely. um well, cool. So no, so you are cranking these things out now, like, I mean, what, one a month pretty much. So
Yeah.
sometimes more than that, because you started your original series that you're trying to work on and things like that. So I don't know if this is naivety or just absolute awe, but how the hell do you do that? How do you do all of that at one time, managing? Because obviously there have to be readings and rehearsals, and you're also on the other side of it trying to plan ahead and all that. How did you manage to acquire extra hours in your day? Because I would like to learn that.
Well, I mean, the days are long.
Yeah.
It's just, when we're rehearsing 3 shows a month, for me alone, that's probably like 27 rehearsals a month,
Hmm.
which average about 3 hours. What I did in the beginning, when I first started doing multiple shows, was I'm like, let me just do them all together and then it'll be fine. And then I'll have some time off. But that was going 8 in the morning to 11 at night, on 3 different shows. And that I didn't factor in breaks. I didn't factor in anything. And it
Right,
just got
right.
way too much. So I've been better about making sure like I have 2 or 3 hours in between, making sure I keep 1 or 2 days free for myself. We do have other company meetings, during that time. But I think you just know that going in, you know how much you're taking on. Um, and then after the first couple, I realized what the time would entail, and I asked myself if I still wanted to do it, and I did.
Mhm.
Um, so, but I think, yeah, there's no way to get around the time I found.
Yeah,
But I find the time that you spend um, makes the final product worthwhile a little more.
sure. Yeah, yeah. And now after having done what I guess probably 6, 7 months worth of material written by other folks, you're now starting to get into some of your more original material, or even I mentioned Corinne earlier. I noticed you either you guys have or haven't. Forgive me for losing the time there. That you were doing a streaming reading
Yeah,
and performance of that, but you're kind of hitting more of your original material that has to make you feel like more empowered.
yeah, absolutely. We wanted to focus on works. So the thing with securing rights to shows is they tend to be a little freer with those rights in virtual productions than they are when you're outside. So we also wanted to look into what works can we explore during this time, because we're in New York City.
Mhm.
So in order to get those rights, for example, they're not going to give there's something which I'm sure you're familiar with, is something called a blackout, which basically is if any author's work is being performed, none of their other works are offered because they think
Mhm.
it's in competition to the show they're putting on.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so if, you know, so we found that obviously there was nothing going on, so there were no blackouts. We had more
Okay.
opportunity to do Tennessee Williams and Edward Albee
Mhm.
before Broadway comes back up again.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
and in terms of the original work, yeah, it's been really exciting, and we've increased the company from 4 to 27 people during the pandemic for the ensemble.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting working with new faces and seeing what that is bringing to the work as well.
And it's probably great for them too, because they can't go on stage right now, or if they
Right.
had opportunities before to do movies or TV, that it's a little more limited now. So it's probably a great opportunity for them to stay sharp and to get some work in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the original series things that you were working on, and you had done a sort of teaser sneak peek of two different performances that I know I saw, and what those were, what 15 to 20 minutes long, just sort of
Right.
for quick scenes to give a taste of what it was. But what is your intent with those? What do you hope that they become in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they'll become longer form.
Mhm.
So the episodes will be a little longer, as well as being able to start arcing a season. So we're taking members of the company and creating original work around them. Um, and so this month, we have Corinne, which we had previously done, which is not a web series. And then actually a series about uh, young Haley, who was a character in The Girl with the Red Hair,
Mhm.
and kind of branching that off. Alexandra Rooney plays her, who is 12 years old, who was 10 when we first did the show, now because of the pandemic. Um,
Mhm.
so it's really interesting to now, because the older Haley is 27, 28. So we can actually do this series over the next few years as Alexandra grows up, um, and start to follow her in real time. Because I think what I've spoken with her mom about and different people is that it's very, very easy, like for characters to be recast because actors age out.
Mhm.
So this is an opportunity where we're developing it around her so she specifically doesn't age out of it.
Cool.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, so I know there's still we're also, and I know I have to do with Broadleaf Riders the same thing, kind of managing like when does the new normal begin versus when are we still doing everything virtual. So when you plan these series out, or the one you're talking about with Alexandra and the girl with the red hair, do you see that as something that you're filming live somewhere, or are you looking to start these series virtually and see when the opportunity comes for you to go live again?
Both, yeah. So, I mean, we have plans to bring it in person, but we start it virtually. I'm also writing things specifically for the virtual medium and then starting to think about when we go out. I'm not trying to rush going out yet,
Yeah.
but it does look that September might be a good indicator for that.
Okay, cool. Um,
So, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to finish one thing. I didn't want to miss this one because a lot of your original work covers mental health issues and everything, and you've launched the Julia Initiative, and I just wanted you to have an opportunity to just talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So the Julia Initiative was created in the first few months of the pandemic, where it is members of the company talking about anything relating to mental illness. And it doesn't have to be specific disorders. It can be anything that in any way relates to it. And we offer resources on how people can get help. The goal is to try to destigmatize talking about it, whatever it is, and bringing awareness to some of the lesser known disorders and things that people go through.
Okay.
So we're hoping that we continue to be able to expand that as we go out, and that those videos go out every 2 weeks. And now we're looking to actually start bringing therapists and health coaches on to start working with that.
Cool. And where can someone find more information on that, or even what you just said?
Yeah, on our website, there is a tab for the Julia Initiative. Also, all of the videos are on our Face-to-Face Films Instagram on the IGTV.
Okay, cool. Excellent.
So you have a book coming out.
I do have a book coming out. Thank you for mentioning that.
So let's talk about that. How long
Yeah.
were you writing it?
Interestingly enough, this was one that I wrote a page and a half for, and kind of knew immediately that I had voice and I had story and I had everything I needed, but I was working on another project. So I had to actually finish that, and it sat in a file for a year before I actually did anything else with it. And when I started working on it, it was a little bit before the pandemic, and then actually, that's not correct. That's not correct. I started it the year before that, but my years are all, I feel like I just kind of took 2020 and put it in a box and I go
Yeah,
19
I
to
agree.
21. So no, I started working on it in 2019, and spent that year working on it. Had one little grief break in the center to deal with a loss, and that actually in the end ended up infusing into the book because the entire story is about grief and loss. So, but yeah, it's called The Weight of Ashes. I guess I should mention that, and it's out July 13th.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was
So,
definitely, it was easily the most difficult, emotionally difficult thing I've ever written.
and you said that you were facing a loss, and that's how you kind of worked that in.
Yeah, well, the entire story. So the story is about the my log line. You know that terminology. Is basically it's a young boy who's unwilling to deal with the loss of his older brother, so he enlists the help of his friends to carry his ashes to the witch on Spook Hill to have him resurrected. And it is, the entire book is about grief and loss and the myriad ways people deal with that, because every character, whether it's the friends trying to find a way to help him, or the main character, the protagonist, or his mother, or other characters associated with it, how they deal with loss and grief in different ways.
Awesome. So in terms of, which is, I think, really interesting with how people deal differently.
Mhm.
Um, did you find yourself surprised by how some of the characters were dealing with grief when you were
It was
writing them?
yeah, because I mean, the normal process for me would have been to actually research and find the methodology of processing grief and things like that. I mean, I've certainly read stuff before, but but I don't know, there was something about this because I was also kind of, I began to realize one of the characters is named after and taken after a friend of mine from when I was a teenager who committed suicide. And it began to occur to me as I was writing about him that I had never really fully processed it. It's 30 years later, but I'd never really fully processed it. And so part of me just wanted to experience that grief process through writing it rather than having read and researched things to do it in a specific way. And it did begin as I worked through the manuscript to each of the characters were then sort of allowed to go their own ways based on their personalities and their experiences. And it was very interesting to see, even as the person who's supposed to be in control of it.
Hmm. So this was very different than from the process you've taken in the past for writing?
Yeah, I mean the project that I was talking about that I was working on is a fantasy novel, a fantasy series, why a teen fantasy series, really. But I had written the first book of it, which will have a home here soon. And I was trying to finish it while working with an editing team. And we're talking about an adventure story with magic and creatures and all kinds of it was writing metaphors ingrained in it, so it was like this big monstrous thing that's supposed to be 5 books, and then writing The Weight of Ashes is a single perspective first person and about half the length of your standard novel. So it was an extremely different process. And I had never thought I would sit down and write something like that because I'm more of I experience the difficulties of life on a daily basis. And when I write, I like to be, escapist about it. That was certainly not escapist. That was like, here are all of my issues. I'm going to put them on a page, kind of thing. So it was an extremely different process.
So it sounds like this particularly Weight of Ashes was much more of an intimate process in terms
Absolutely. Yeah. I was more emotionally connected to this than I've been to anything I've written before. And I think that's why I had to have breaks built in there where I wasn't writing for a few days because I needed to be able to process a scene that I just wrote or something like that. I mean, and that again, new to me. I always like to be emotionally connected and I want my readers to be emotionally connected, but I had never experienced such a depth to it before.
of. Wow. Um, were outside of what you were speaking about, were there any other inspirations going in, even
Yeah,
other
I mean,
writers?
I think I will always be inspired by the writers that specifically the ones that I read when I was younger. I mean, my love for telling sort of out of this world kind of stories is an odd connection, but like Charlotte's Web was the story when I was a kid that really took me to a place that I wanted to be, sure, talking animals and spiders who write messages and things like that. It seemed very magical to me. And I wanted to tell stories that even if they were based in reality, had elements of fantasy to them. But then as a teen, I started reading a lot of Edgar Allan Poe and Stephen King, and suddenly became this fan of the intense psychological horror that they told. And so, you know, I think that experience probably influenced The Weight of Ashes a great deal because I feel like if I learned anything about suspense and fright and things of that nature, I learned it through reading those authors.
How would you describe the genre of this?
The Weight of Ashes is going to be published as literary fiction, which is always going to be a fascinating thing to me because if you ask somebody to describe what literary fiction is, you'll get ask 20 people, you're going to get 20 different answers. So I don't know. It's going to be fiction. It's a novel. I started writing it thinking I was still in my young adult teen genre because the kids are 14 years old, 16 years old, varying ages in there. And it felt to me like the story was geared toward teens. I very immediately was told otherwise, not just by my publisher, but by some others who felt like it would be better served to be fiction, and then pitched as a book for teens as well, especially for teens who are dealing with loss and grief and trying to find some way to understand it better, that this story could be something that would help them. And I'd like to hope that that's the case.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What I know you've talked about writing a lot of YA. So what is different about approaching the character you're talking through as 14-year-old versus where you are now?
I mean, if you're writing something that is going to be young adult or really any age group, you have to think of the character at that age and make them extremely relatable to kids that age. Not every 14-year-old is built the same, but you're going to have a very standard in there of what your average 14-year-old is going to be like, and how they will use language, or how they're going to dress, or at what point are they going to resist because they feel like they know everything, but do it in a way that 14-year-old will be like, I agree, he does know everything, kind of thing. So I mean, it's all really about relatability, and I know it's not an easy thing to do. It helps most writers who are doing kids books or teen books have gone through like the family life, and they have the kids, and so they're seeing their own kids grow up, and they're around other kids because of that, and so they get that exposure. I just channel who I was, and and to many degrees still am. Not that I stopped growing at 14, but I think I still have a very strong connection to that kid. And I still remember Weight of Ashes. I actually wrote is in 1989. So for me, I could channel a lot of what I went through, even though I wasn't 14 in 1989. A lot of what I went through at that point in my life, and the language that we used and the shows that there's so much pop culture in this book, from music to movies to everything, just references in general, and that made it a little bit easier for me to channel, which I think will appeal to adults from that era more than it will the kids. But the way they spoke to one another, to me, still is very consistent with the way kids speak to one another now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there a reason to pick that specific age?
Not really. I think I worked backwards on that. His older brother died in a car accident. He wasn't driving, but I wanted him to be of driving age, so, but not too old, where he was on the verge of leaving the house or anything. So kind of settled on his brother being 16. And then I wanted to have a couple years, a gap there, because their father left the entire family when they were both very young, and this older brother has kind of served as the father figure. So I felt like a 2-year gap was probably better than something longer, and so I kind of just, like I said, just kind of worked backwards and wound up at Mark, the main character, is actually 13, recently 13, so he's actually 3 years younger. But and 13 was such an important age too, because I mean, you'll remember when you're 12, you kind of in that, like, I'm treated like a kid, and I kind of have to accept it a little bit because I'm 12. But now that I'm a teenager, I'm grown up, and you have to treat me differently and respect the fact that I'm older. So having him just turn 13 allows me to play on the dynamic with his mother a little bit more.
All right. Was there anything in the process, without spoiling anything, that surprised you?
Honestly, what surprised me the most was, I would go back to processing the death of my childhood friend, and I knew going in that was part of it, which is why I was using his name, and making him the character that is sort of the villain, because again, trying to process a lot of the anger that I still had that he took his own life. And yeah, what really surprised me more than anything else is his story arc, and where he wound up in the end, versus where I originally thought he would be. And Again, if I say much more, then it probably gives that away, but it surprised me a lot and actually helped me finally come to some point of terms with that loss. As you know, 30 years later, you don't think that you're still dealing with it, but you are.
Wow. I mean, I like when things surprise me that way, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun.
So the book on the 13th, and also now for pre-order, right, is on Amazon?
Oh yeah, it's available anywhere. It's you can go into any bookstore and pre-order it. You can order it on Amazon, though I would highly recommend, for those of you who are not aware, if you're gonna order stuff from Amazon, go to Amazon Smile or smile.amazon.com, and there you can pick your favorite nonprofit. And if they're listed in there, they have to have registered. Like I registered Broadleaf Writers, for example. And if you go and order from Smile and have a nonprofit listed, then a portion of your purchases will always automatically go back to the nonprofit. So just a little note there, as I'm telling you that you can order it on Amazon. If you're going to order it on Amazon, order it from Amazon Smile, pick your charity, so that at least part of that's going back to a nonprofit.
Awesome. I didn't know that myself. I ordered from
I know, it's a little hidden secret. I try to make sure everybody knows about it.
Awesome. And then it is officially released, you said, in a little less than a month, July 13th.
Yeah, July 13th. And I will have a number of events, most of them still virtual, but some in person, that will be through July and August.
Awesome. And where can people also find information about what else is to come?
It's a really difficult website. It's my name, ZacharyStill.com, and I'm updating all the events on there. I have my book information. There are links to some independent bookstores, as I will always try to encourage people to buy books from independent stores to help keep them around. So everything that I do there, all my social media is linked to that website too, so you can find me across the channels.
Awesome. Well, I am really, really excited for people to read this.
Yeah, well, I am too. It's something that I know you know the feeling. It's something I'm insanely proud of, and there's always going to be that side of me that I want the success as a writer, but more than that, I have this very personal, intimate story that I want people to read, and I'm very proud of it. And you know, just be prepared. I haven't had anybody read it yet that didn't then get mad at me because I made them cry several times. So,
wow, it is a different feeling when there's such a personal connection.
yeah, absolutely. I think across any art, whether it's singing or acting or writing, you have to have that emotional connection to the creativity, the creation of it, so that I think there are a lot of people, and I'm not recommending people don't learn how to do something well, but there are a lot of people who had some great success and not been like the greatest at their art, but could create an emotional connection that you just can't avoid. And you may create that connection, and people they're there. They want more of it.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm always happy to be able to talk shop with somebody. I'm glad we finally had the opportunity to do this. And
Yeah, me too.
and as always, I look forward to all the projects you have coming up, and keeping up with you as you get back into the living world. And hopefully one of these days I'll be able to make it up to New York and watch something live. That would be awesome.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
it was great. Yeah, it was absolutely great meeting you and talking to you.
Yeah, cool.